What's up, everyone? Friedemann Finesse here from Holistic Songwriting. How are you guys doing? Let's go ahead and start the live stream. All right, so in this little live stream, I think I want to start something a little bit new with this whole Q&A format because I'm getting a little bit tired of, just doing the same thing every week over and over again, basically. And so this week, for the first time, I want to try out something a little bit different in that today we're going to talk still questions, and I'm going to answer your questions, hopefully, if I can. But we're going to pick themes. So, in this case, I think this is going to be interesting because yesterday I was directing a music video for an artist that I'd been producing as well. And so I have a little bit of experience in film music video making, and this is my third project that I have directed. Or is it my fourth? No, I think it's my third. And I'm also an editor, as you guys know. So I'm also editing the entire artist series. Is pretty much all me. I have someone who helps me a little bit, but most of it is me. Like, I have final edit, and I edit all of the audio stuff and all stuff like that. So I have a little bit of experience in that kind of field. I'm also, did all of this. So everything that you're seeing right now was basically designed by me. I know it's not perfect yet. The new artist series is going to look great, though. You might have seen some pictures on Facebook already. So I have a little bit of experience in the music video field. Yeah, so I think it might even be helpful that I'm not like super pro or anything like that. I mean, I've been on a lot of sets for music videos, so I've seen a lot of professionals at work. So that might be helpful. But I think it's helpful that I'm not like really at the top of like I'm not a music video director. That's not my main job, obviously. But I think it's helpful because because I have kind of the same problems as you have probably. And so again, what I want to do with this whole episode here is just talk about music videos and answer some questions that you guys might have about shooting your very first music video. Because I sure can tell you a couple of things that we did wrong. And we learned a lot from our shoots, for sure. And I learned a lot from just watching professionals at work. So if you guys have any questions about shooting a music video or concepting a music video, editing it, shoot, because today it's going to be all about that. And so I'm going to jump a little bit into the chat here. I don't think we have any questions about music videos yet. I think I'm throwing you guys into cold water here because you guys didn't know that this was going to be what this episode is about. In the future, I'm going to be a little bit earlier with the themes of the next Q&A. So if you're interested in that kind of thing, you will know a little bit earlier and maybe you can think of a couple of questions. But anyways, here's the live chat. And until we get some questions about music videos, I could maybe talk a little bit about my experience yesterday with the music video that we shot for a song called Just Might Like It. And so we shot in Utrecht, which is about 2 hours from here. It's in the Netherlands. And we shot with an Italian DOP, so that's director of photography, so cameraman, and so he's in charge of basically the shot. So he's in charge of the lighting. He's in charge of the cinematography, so the way the shot is framed, and blocking. Blocking means where everyone stands, basically, and what's in the foreground, what's in the background, all of that kind of thing. And yes, so the camera, I mean, he's also physically holding the camera. We had, well, the 2 talents, which was Joe Bassa, the artist that I wrote the song for and that I produced, and myself. This time, I'm also in the video. I also have a short section in the song. And we had one more person who was basically helping us out with everything because we were a very, very small team, as you can see. So this is very DIY filmmaking. We didn't have a lot of money to do it. We shot a very quick and dirty kind of music video, right? Which is probably the situation you're at as well. And he did focus pull, so meaning we had a little motor in front of the camera. Dude, I mean, it was so fantastic to see our DOP put together this rig that he had to like hold the camera. So we used something that's called a Ronin M, which is like a sort of this gear that you hold in these two handles, and the camera just sort of floats under there. It's with a motor, so the motor kind of balances it out, which helps to have a really steady kind of picture. So there's no jerky moves or anything like that, so you can walk with it and the picture is still really steady. It's also known as a steady cam or a slide cam. This one is just a really really high-end kind of version of that. Again, it's called the Ronin M, and we rented one for that. And he kind of built his own little contraption out of that thing and a couple of other things, which was really fascinating to see. So he used like cable binders to tie together like batteries from different apparatus to like make the thing that he wanted to have. It was like someone, it reminded me of someone like building their own synthesizer, which was really fascinating to see. And the most important part of it, I think, of this rig was what's it called? A focus pull, like an automatic focus. I forgot what the actual title of it is, but it's basically, so he puts like this ring with all these teeth around it, around the lens, and then this little thing, this little machine kind of like goes right against it and has like, so the gears kind of like interlock. And so then with like this wireless thing, you can kind of move this little gear, and that moves the focus of the camera, meaning you can control the focus of the camera with a wireless little gadget, right? And so that was what the second person that's not on screen did, basically. He was the focus puller. That's what that's called. So he was in charge of like wirelessly controlling the focus of the camera. All right, so that's kind of our setup for yesterday. I've done some more advanced setups as well. We had some bigger tunes for the last couple of videos. This one we had to do fairly spontaneously because we wanted to catch all the Christmas lights in Utrecht. At this time of year, it's really beautiful there. So yes, good. Let's look at some of the questions that we've gotten so far. All right, let's see. The Piano Speaks says, what are some good camera techniques for epic themed videos? All right. So from personal experience, first of all, like the two things that come to mind here are the cinematography is probably the most important one. And well, the lighting and the lenses kind of fall into that category as well, I guess. So if you want a really epic kind of Lord of the Rings kind of feel, right? What I would recommend is, and again, I'm no professional, but this is like from what I've seen so far, is using like a relatively wide lens and then stepping further back from the scenery, and then also finding a scenery that is actually, that has a lot of depth, right? So you don't want to shoot in like a small room if you want an epic video, obviously. You kind of want to go out into nature and find something that has like this depth of field to it, and then that creates a really kind of huge kind of feel. So wide lenses are really good if you want that epic kind of feel. In terms of camera movement, you really want to stick to well, not a tripod. For music videos, I find whenever you lock down, that kind of takes the energy out of the music video. So that's probably not such a good idea unless you're standing on something that's called a dolly. And a dolly is basically, it's like a big skateboard that you put the camera on and you can like move it on that thing, right? Another thing that you could get is, so this you can pretty much build yourself. I built my own. It's a DIY dolly, which I built just with a couple of skateboard wheels and basically, plywood. And the other thing that you could get, this one you probably would have to rent, is sometimes called a jib in the industry. So that's basically a crane. And a very cheap what's it called? A cheap alternative to that would be using just your camera stand. And what has that same kind of jib feel of like where you go into the scene and then you slowly move out and you get this sort of like bigger picture. Something like that you can do with just any ordinary camera stand by you take one of the three legs, like of your tripod, you take one of the legs, put it all the way in, so it basically only stands on two legs, and then you kind of unscrew the hinge of the arm, basically, of the camera, and then you can, if you hold the arm that way, you can move in like this and pull out like that, and it has a very slow, very soft kind of transition, so it doesn't look shaky because you're not actually holding it. It is still on the tripod, but it's a very nice way to sort of simulate a dolly, and it has that very nice smooth movement to it. So that's a very cheap kind of camera trick that you can use to get that really slow kind of epic pull out dolly out, basically. All right. Was it actually recorded as live setting? Says Cillian Scanlon. No, our video that we shot was pre-recorded, so we had the entire production done. And we had like a little JBL, which is like this little speaker thing that the focus puller had in his pocket, basically, and he had an MP3 player that he started. We would hear the track and we would just lip sync to it, basically. This is actually an interesting question. Should you lip sync or should you actually sing along? It really depends on the song, I think. If you want something that is really, really emotional, if you want a really emotional performance, which is 90% of the time, then you do want to actually sing along. You actually want to see, you know, your veins pop out a little bit with the high notes and stuff like that. But in our case, we wanted something that was sort of like kind of dreamy, and we wanted like, that's why we wanted all the Christmas lights. We wanted something dreamy, we wanted something very atmospheric kind of. And so it was supposed to look like, so we were just basically walking through Utrecht. And the look that we wanted was as if these two people were just sort of slowly walking through Utrecht, talking to themselves, basically like pondering over a couple of questions. And so we did a very like sort of deadpan look. We didn't have a lot of facial expressions, and we didn't sing any of the lyrics. So in our case, that was our choice to make. But usually, yes, you do want to sing along. All right. I'm shooting a parkour scene and a fight scene tomorrow for my music video. Do you have any camera, choreography, or light tips? Says Kyle Anderson. All right, that's a lot of questions in one. Let's see. So first of all, for the fight scenes, I think with anything that's action-oriented, editing is probably your most powerful tool. In terms of you have to really check your angles, especially on well, both really. If a fight scene in particular, though, like if you hit someone, you might want to make sure that, so, right, if I'm standing here and this other person is standing here, if I hit them like this, obviously I'm not going to hit them for real. I'm going to sort of do this, right? I'm going to simulate a hit. If the camera is standing over there, that's going to look bad. So the way I want to look is like this, right? If I do this and this person goes like this at the same time as I'm moving my fist in front of his face, not on his face, please, then that's going to look good. So there's a couple of angles where that works. You could also stand behind me. So if I hit someone like this, right, you can't really see the contact. Even if you saw it like this, right, this would still work. If this person, you know, does this at the same time, that would still look like an actual hit. So the angles on this one are really important. In terms of editing, it often helps if you cut on the actual hit. So if you hit someone, cutting on that hit, and then having another sequence where you actually make like a big move back can also work really well. A lot of action directors, especially nowadays, do that, as opposed to maybe Jackie Chan, who would always like just keep it still and almost do no editing during the fight scenes. But modern editing in fight scenes typically does the cut right on the action. And this doesn't just go for fight scenes, but this also goes for a lot of action scenes. So for example, for car crashes or something like that, there's often a very hard cut exactly on the action. As for lighting, let's see. As for lighting an action scene, well, in general, lighting is a really tricky subject. And I've made a couple of mistakes with lighting. Like, I'm still learning about lighting. But one of the most important lessons I think I've learned is lighting doesn't mean the scene has to be lit. Lighting means casting shadows. That's the most important lesson I learned about lighting. The more shadows you have, the more dramatic your shot is also going to be. But you always want shadows. So for example, if you look at my face right now, right? Would you say there's shadows in my face? Probably not. But there is, right? So wait, this side of my face here, there are some shadows. They're just light shadows, right? They're not super dark, but this side of my face is definitely darker than this side of my face, right? Because this is where my light is. This is where my key light is. So this is actually really important to understand. Now, if I were to turn on this light, which is my hair light right on top of me, then this side here would be much darker, and it would basically be just completely dark. So if I move like this, maybe you can see that a little bit more. If I hold my hand up above my forehead, maybe you can see that there's some darker shadows forming here, and I'm still waiting for the live feed to catch up with my actual words. So let's see. All right, so you can see that this side has just gotten a little bit darker, right? And that's one way of creating shadows. So basically how dark the shadows are determines how dramatic your scene is. If you want something really, really dramatic, like a film noir kind of look, then you don't want to have any lights here, anything that bounces light on this side of the face, right? Then you're going to have like a really sort of very high contrast kind of image where you have a lot of black here, much more than I have right now, and basically the definition of the face over here. That's kind of the look that Adele goes for, and some Sia videos, oh well, Sia probably not so much. Sia actually has a little bit lighter shadows. So so that's one thing. So then if you bring the brightness up of this side, of the off-camera side typically, although actually I do it on camera as well, we can talk about that in just a second. But basically, the brighter the shadows are, the more friendly your film is going to look. So if you want something that looks really dramatic and really dark, then the shadows should be dark and the other side is just normal. If you want something that is like friendly and bright, like a lot of YouTube videos are just evenly lit, where you almost have no shadows on one side of the face, where we have two key lights basically. So you have like this really just bright and just perfect kind of look, and it looks really like proper and neat, you know? So for typically for music videos, though, you kind of want one side darker than the other side. And the way that this is accomplished is, first of all, you have, as I said, you have a key light. So this is going to be your main light, and this is going to shine from the front of the actor into the face. And typically it's at a 54 degree angle from the person. So the camera would be standing right in front of me where you are right now. So this is light number one. Then you typically have, unless you're going for that film noir look where you want total darkness on one side, you typically have another light over here, which is going to be your fill light. And that fill light typically is, as I said, darker than the key light. So it's just filling in, that's why it's called a fill light, those shadows. And then the third light is, in this case, the one above me, and I'm just using my regular lamp in my room for that. And that gives you this little shine on the head, which is called a hair light, or rim light in my case, because I don't have any hair. So this light is just important for, and this is probably the most important light, to be honest. I mean, this one is really important, the key light, but this one super, super important because it gives you definition against the background. See, if I were to turn off this light, then I would just sort of, the whole picture would look really flat. And one of the most important jobs that a cinematographer or DOP has is to make sure that the room, that the picture, which is obviously 2D, it's just on your screen, right? It's a 2D picture, looks as if it was 3D, as if you got that, if you got a lot of room there, right? And so this is also interesting for epicness. You really want to create a sense of depth like that. And a really easy way to, or you know, it's not necessarily easy, but easy to understand at least, to do that, to create that sense of depth, to create that sense of separation against the background from the actor, is to give that sort of ring or that rim against the background. And so that's a really easy way, well, at least easy to understand, to separate the talent from the background. So that's really important. Right, so one more thing. So you're shooting a fight scene or a parkour scene. If you're doing that, I mean, I don't know how much control you have over the light because you're outside, but there's two things I can recommend to you. First of all, if you're shooting outside, try to hit the golden hour. And that means roughly around sundown, when it's like right between, like twilight, right when it's between day and night, because that's the best lighting typically for the entire day. Also, early morning, when it turns from night to day, is also usually fine. But typically there you have this really kind of blue sky. And then if you bring in a light like this one, which is very kind of yellow look, that's a really beautiful look. If you have yellow faces, and typically if you go outside and film with street lights and stuff like that, they're all very yellowish. Then you got the yellow faces and you got a kind of bluish background. This is a look that you might know from Michael Bay's movies. He loves that kind of stuff. Like all of his backgrounds are always blue and the people in the front are always yellow. It's always this kind of look. Blue in the backgrounds, yellow on the faces. Don't do it the opposite way around. We've tried, it doesn't work. Blue faces just always look stupid. So yellow in the front, blue in the background. There's a really nice contrast in the colors there because they are opposite colors. So, or orange, I should say, for the faces. So that's the first thing. Shoot during golden hour. That's the best lighting that you're going to get. Also, if you have like a sort of cloudy day, or if there's like morning fog or something like that, then that's going to serve as a diffuser, which means that the shadows on your face, on the faces of your actors, aren't going to be as harsh. So if you have really harsh lighting, typically the sun is a pretty harsh light. You get this really dark, kind of very exact kind of shadows on the nose or whatever, and that doesn't really look that nice. It's a really harsh kind of look. So typically for most music videos, you want a sort of softer shadow, and for that, typically you use something that's called a softbox, which is this white thing. You can use transparent paper or baking paper or whatever, and put it in front of your light. That all works, and it will just diffuse the light and make it a little bit softer, and then your shadows get a little bit softer, like here. Like if you look at the shadow of my nose, it's not a very the line between dark and light is very blurred. It's not a very sharp line, if you understand what I mean. But if you if I used a hard light, then that line would be very sharp, very exact. And that's something that you typically probably don't want for a music video shoot, because you kind of want that little bit, you want that Hollywood look a little bit, right? And, you know, a lot of producers and a lot of Hollywood directors nowadays use like soft lighting, because that's the one that's the most flattering to the face in general. Right. What else did I want to say? So yeah, so the morning fog kind of diffuses light, which is what helps you with your face. So it diffuses the light, and that makes sure that your face looks more evenly lit, and it just looks a lot nicer. And secondly, the other thing I wanted to say is, if you're shooting outside, then use the sun as a hair light. So you don't want to use it as a key light. So if the sun is over there, usually you don't want to use it as a key light. I mean, you can, but it's not as good as using it as a hair light. So if this was, I would use this as, this would be the sun, right? And I just let it give me that ring. And then I would have someone running around with a bounce, which is basically, it's these big things that you've seen, like sometimes they have gold or silver on one side, and they're just walking around the talent trying to catch the light and reflecting it into their faces. You can make one of those on your own by just, I used styrofoam when I was a little bit younger. I would just buy these huge packets of styrofoam, and they're like $1 or something like that, and they work just great. If you want silver reflector, so a lot more light to be reflected, you can also cover it in aluminum foil. So that's also possible. But that's super easy to make. Like you don't have to buy a professional bounce, even though they're really cheap. I think they're like $30 or something like that. But if you're on a budget, I can understand that even $30 can be a pain in the ass. So, right. So the reflector, you're going to use that as a key light. So you take the sun and reflect it into the face of the actor, and preferably, again, from the side, not from directly behind the camera. Good. Okay, right. So that was a lot of information on a very short question, but I can see we don't have that many questions today. It's probably a subject that you guys aren't really that used to, or maybe not thinking about that much at the moment. But making a music video is kind of part of the whole experience. I mean, you probably don't have all the money to hire an entire team to film your music videos. So, yeah. Cool. Contempt9 says, make a black and white video so you don't have to deal with colors and less light settings. That is true. I find black and white is can be a little bit tricky in terms of your image. So it depends on your message that you put out there. But if you make like something that's supposed to feel very authentic, or like art, or if you're making something, maybe you're in a mathcore band or something like that, something that's very cerebral, then I find black and white is a really great way to go. But for most other genres, just in terms of marketing and just putting yourself out there, I find color is much, much stronger, just because it relates to people better. It just pops out more, you know, it makes us feel like we're really there, much more than a black and white kind of video, which has more of that artsy undertone. And sometimes we don't want that. I don't always want that with my music videos. So almost all of the music videos I've shot so far, yes, all of them were just in color. And yes, handling color is difficult, but I think it's worth it. I think having color is usually the way to go, probably. All right. Let's see. Oh, this is a good one. Kyle Anderson says, any tips for filming at night? Yes. So we filmed at night yesterday. And one of the things I found most impressive about our DOP was the way he handled light. So that was super mind-blowing to me, because I'd worked with cameramen before, and some really, really famous German cameramen. But the way he handled light was just really, it was on a completely different level. Because he would really like, the lighting was his main focus. Like that was all that he was really worried about, was like, where do we get the best light? And the most important thing, I think, is We never shot in the dark. We never shot anywhere where it was really dark. There was always a lot of lights around, and you still had that sense that it was night because you could still see the sky and it was black, right? But there was a lot of light around still, right? So this is probably the most important tip. When you're shooting night scenes, you need a lot of light. So it's not easy to shoot at night so a lot of beginners, and this is what we did in the beginning as well. Not yesterday, but like when I was starting out with, filming stuff. What I did in the very beginning was I would just go out into the night and just shoot really dark scenes, and then later on just crank up the gain on the camera, the ISO basically. And I thought, yeah, that's fine. But the problem with that is that whenever you bring darkness up, whenever you give gain into darkness, it's kind of the same as with music, right? If we have a recording that was done at too low a volume, if you bring up the gain, you're going to get that noise. And you get the same thing on a camera as well. In a picture, you get noise. So in the blacks, you're going to see all this little noise, like these little white dots appearing and disappearing. And that looks bad. You don't want that. So typically for night scenes, you need a lot of light. Especially think about your key light and think about your rim light as well. So filming at night is probably one of the most difficult things you can do. So really think about how you're going to pull that off, and go to places where there's a lot of lights around you. And one of the problems with shooting at night as well is that if you don't have lights in the background, if it's really dark in the background, you're going to lose that sense of depth that you really, really need to sell the illusion that you're actually watching a living person, and that you're not just shooting like a person in front of a black curtain, right? You don't want that sense of like, ugh, this is so tight. You want that sense of depth. So, cool. All right, so we got another question from Karianne Hilkema, and she says, is it true that people love to see the artist in a music video? And if so, what to do if you're not young and pretty? All right, so I have two things to say about that. First of all, there are artists who don't appear in their music videos, and so it is possible, but I think it's difficult. I think people wanna, in this industry, the music industry is all about relating to a person. It's all about authenticity. And so Sia is having some troubles making that work for her, that she's not in her music videos. And some people really like that, and her music is so emotional that I think it just works. But it is very, very tricky not appearing in your music videos, because otherwise it will look a little bit like, well, it's a video, but is it really the music video? Does it feel like I get to know the artist a little bit better? So I think if you're not appearing in your music video, it is really important that you get your personality across some other way. And so there's bands that manage to do that by doing like some, usually it's really crazy, really elaborate kind of things, or making videos that are just really very artistic or something like that. I'm thinking of, what's that song? Breeze Blocks by Alt J, I think is one of the coolest music videos ever. If you haven't seen that one, check it out. So it's called Breeze Blocks by Alt J. That's Alt-J. Really, really love that music video, and the band doesn't appear in that video, and they don't appear in any of their videos. I think so. So in that case, it works because they have a really, really strong vision and a really good story to tell, I think. And they made other music videos where it didn't really work that well. They did one that was called I forgot what it's called, but it's one where it's like a bullfight basically. I forgot what that video was called, what the song was called. But that one I felt didn't really work that well because they didn't really have a really interesting story to tell here, I think. So yeah, I think you have to get your message across some other way in that case. So you have to think a little bit more about what kind of story you want to tell. This brings me to another really interesting point actually about music videos, and this is something I keep doing wrong on every single shoot that I do just because I think I can do it and I really can't, and that is acting. When you're shooting a music video, especially if it's for the first 10 times, don't ever think you can act. You're not an actor, unless you are an actor. But if you're like me, or like, Joe Bassa who I was working with, you're not an actor. It just won't work. Just play to your strengths. don't try to act. If it doesn't look good, it won't look good, right? So just make sure you do what you do best on your music videos. And one of the most important lessons I've really learned is do what you're good at, right? And do something. A lot of music videos that I just see people, a lot of musicians want to do kind of that 21 Pilots kind of thing where they're just standing around and just like singing like deadpan, kind of that thing. And that can really backfire on you because it doesn't have a lot of personality. For 21 Pilots, it works for other reasons. I'm not going to go into those right now. But having that deadpan kind of expression, it's just going to create a sort of distance between you and your audience. And that's something you don't really want. So you have to do something, right? First of all, think about what you're going to do in this video. Physically, what are you going to do? Are you going to walk? Yesterday, we decided we're just going to walk. It gives us something to do. It's much easier than to just stand somewhere and just look into the camera or off camera and make sure you don't look into the camera. All that is really awkward and really weird, and you don't want to get caught in a place where you feel uncomfortable. You always want to feel comfortable during a music video shoot. So give yourself stuff to do. With the last video I directed, we made sure that this was also Joe Bassa, by the way, that she was dancing the entire time. So this was a one shot, so we didn't have any edits during the entire video. This video has not been released, by the way, yet. So if you're looking for it, it's not here yet. So this is a one shot. So we had one very long dance choreography for the entire shot. So we had to know exactly where everything had to go. And this was really difficult to do. But the good thing about it was that everyone knew exactly what they had to do, and they had something to do. In this case, dance. We had something with chairs. Everyone knew what they were supposed to do during this shoot. And the shoots that fail are those where you say like, you know what, we have a good cameraman, we have the great lighting, we have a great location, and then we just improvise. That stuff never works. So you have to make some plans to figure out what it is that you're going to do. All right, so we're half an hour into this Q&A. Since I talked a little bit in the beginning about my video shoot yesterday, I'm going to do 10 more minutes and maybe like answer 2 more questions or something like that. Is that all right with you guys? All right. Mr. Fed 1994 says, what do you think of the style of video making? Basically a live take of the performance, look good, instead of the increasing trend of recording the audio first just so you can have multiple angles. Oh, right. So I think both are fine. They're just different things to me. Like having a live video is just really different to me than having a music video. A music for me is a pre-recorded track. It's like laid down in the production. Everything is perfect, right? And I want to hear the song as it was meant to be. And then I want to see a really cool video that goes along with it and furthers that emotion of that track. That's what a music video is for me. A live track I watch if I like the band already usually. And I just want to get sort of into that a little bit more and just see what they're like live. So it's just a very different thing for me. I think it's just completely 2 different kinds of shoots. All right. All right, Dan XEPX2 says, what is your take on a shock value video whose concept is completely opposite from the song's concept for a newer artist as opposed to a regular video? I think that can actually work. I think that might actually be a good idea sometimes. Make sure that there is some overlay between the message of the song and the video. You don't want it to feel like amateur hour, right? You want people to understand that there is some correlation, but having a shock value in your video and sometimes even going against the music can be very, very strong. I mean, we've seen The Weeknd do stuff like that before, you know, where you have like this really cute and kind of light, sexy song like Starboy, and then on the video you see he gets strangled or suffocated or whatever. And we had like videos that were like super sweet and sexy and love songs or whatever, and we had like some pretty hardcore stuff going on screen, right? And especially if you're a beginning artist, that stuff can really get you some clicks. So it is something I would do in the beginning, yeah, sure, because it gives you just clicks, right? Do something that you're proud of, and do something that, you know, speaks to your personality. Obviously, find something that you can be proud of. Really, that's a big part of it, because it's going to be much harder to sell something that you're not really proud of as well. But yes, a little bit of shock value, especially in the beginning, I think is not a bad idea. All right, Caleb Walters says, can you do an artist series about their music videos? Well, I always try to talk about that a little bit as well. It's a really good idea, though, to do an episode just about that. I think would be really interesting. So the new artist series, which is going to come out on Christmas Eve, is going to focus on music videos as well, a lot. Like that's going to be a pretty big part of it. And, you know, especially in the Adele episode, I talked a lot about music videos. I just think a music video is always a really interesting extension of the personality of the artist. And we can kind of see what it is that they wanted us to hear in the music. So I always try to focus on that as well a little bit. Okay. Karian says, yes, more in-depth video about music videos, please. Cool. Yeah, glad to hear it. So, let's see. Oh, all right. Mr. Fed corrected himself by saying, it was hard to summarize the question, but I meant when people pretend it's a live session and then they actually shot one live take and mounted with many video takes. Yeah, that's something, right. So having like so you have the song pre-recorded and then you film yourself a couple of times doing playing the song from different angles, right? So typically how that works is, typically you only have one camera, right? Some people use two. Best way to go with, it's definitely the easiest, even though it doesn't sound like it, the easiest way typically is to use just one camera. The way I would shoot that was, so I have a band, say, of 4 people, 5 people, so right? So first of all, I would do a master shot. So just have the band play together and shoot it from a little bit further away so we can see all of them. Or at least maybe go a little bit closer so we like see 3 people at a time and move the camera. This is really important. I always want a little bit of movement in all of my shots. I don't want anything to look still. Unless I'm making an artistic video, but usually for videos that have a little bit of energy, I want there to be movement in the camera. I find that really, really important, even if it's just very, very little. Even if it's just this, right? If I'm holding the camera and just gently, ever so gently moving it left and right and maybe in and out or something like that, that's already enough just to sort of convey that sense of movement. So that's the first shot I would do, is the master shot. Next, I would do personal shots. So I would go to every musician in the band and just film them and start maybe with their, usually I'll just go on their faces, with a singer especially. With other musicians like a keyboardist, I might like film the keyboard a little bit, maybe from the side. But the emotions, especially the face, is really important. But if I have very little time, then I will just really do that in one take. I'll film their face and go to the keyboard a little bit and go back to their face and maybe like film their shoes a little bit, because that might be cool if they're like tapping their feet and like the rhythm or something like that, or their ass if they're moving it like that, you know. So that I will do in one take. If I have a little bit more time and I know we can do a couple more takes after the first run through with every single musician, then I'm just going to film the face. And maybe from different angles, look for the light and see how I can sort of frame their face so it looks really nice. And I'm trying to catch those moments. Maybe they have one moment where they're just looking over to another musician, go like this, or where they smile, or they just can't hold back and they have to laugh or something like that, right? Those are the moments I'm trying to catch with that. So if I have a little bit more time, I'm going to stay on the face for the entire take. And if I have a little bit more time, I'm going to start with the hands and feet and all of that kind of stuff first, because I want people to sort of get used to the idea that they're being filmed first. I don't want to start with their face, because in the beginning, everyone is tense in a music video. So you want to do the really up close and personal shots. You always want to do that last. Really think about the psychology behind that. Performers are nervous when they're on camera. It feels like 1,000 eyes are watching you, and that's typically how it is on a set. So start with the easy stuff, just the hands. Like, no one cares about their hands, what their hands look like or their feet look like. Well, I mean, shoes, right? Girls, singers, sure, that's a problem sometimes, but it's definitely not as big a problem as filming your face. So that's kind of how I would shoot that. And then if you have more time, I would probably just go in and find some interesting shots. So maybe have some interesting OTS shots. So that's an over-the-shoulder shot where I go behind the talents and just maybe film from. So maybe have a sort of a tight lens. So that means like a longer lens. So that's some like 50 to 80 millimeters is typically the ones that I would go with. which gives that sense of depth. So these are lenses that you have to focus on the talent, and everything else is going to be a little bit blurry, especially if something's really close to the camera and you're filming, your focus is on something that's really far away, then whatever is really close to the camera is going to be really blurry. And so one of my favorite shots really is to go over the shoulder of maybe the keyboard player and film the drummer, and then put the focus on the drummer. And so the keyboard player is going to be like you see just their silhouette sort of in the edge of the screen, and it's going to be super blurred. And it looks really, really cool. And those kind of shots I find always work really well, especially for those close-ups. If I'm going in really close, maybe on a drum set or something, like for that snare drum hit or something like that, I really typically want to use a tight lens. So you kind of need two types of lenses. One that's maybe 30 millimeters or 25 millimeters or something like that. Something that with higher f-stop, that you can move away with a little bit further, so you get a master shot where everything is in focus basically. And then you want like a tight lens, so 50 to 80 millimeters. 80 millimeters is a typical portrait lens where you can move in a little bit closer and everything in the background is blurry. That's just a really nice kind of look. All right, so I'll answer one more question. Let's see. All right. So Chinmoy Patar, this is a quick question, so I'm going to answer this one quickly. If the song concept is about my love, what is the best place to shoot that video? The best place to shoot your video is typically the best place that you can shoot at. Just always what I mean by that is find a place that you like, that looks actually really cool, that you're excited about. And so yesterday in Utrecht, we just did that because I really love that city. It's actually one of my favorite cities in the world. It's really pretty, especially during Christmas time with all the Christmas lights out and stuff like that. So that's why we shot there. I knew that it was going to look great on camera. This is a city that just has to be filmed, kind of. And there's like this tunnel. You're going to see it in the video when we release it, but it just looks beautiful. Like the lighting there, the lights are just absolutely breathtaking. It really doesn't matter so much where you film. Any video you can kind of film anywhere. If you have a good location, you can film anything there, from an action movie to a drama scene, I think. It's more about how you film it, I think, than really about the location. I mean, this is a really general kind of statement, but I'm sure you could find counterexamples for that as well. But find a location that looks really, really interesting and good, you know? So for the next video, we're thinking about shooting in a parking garage. I think that's gonna, so like a sort of a huge like what's it called? Yeah, parking house, right? So I think that has a really interesting kind of cold, really spacious, kind of epic sort of feel to it. So that I'm thinking about, like, I'm just thinking about locations that I would be interested in seeing in a film, and locations that I would be interested in shooting at, right? Thinking about like the depth of field, and that's maybe one thing that you should think about is how can I get the depth of field into the picture? So having a room for a really personal, up close kind of story, it's probably better to shoot in a little bit smaller room, still big enough so you have enough space to move the camera back, because sometimes the camera just magnifies the picture by a lot, so you need to step back to get a very close shot, especially with those tighter lenses. That can be really tricky. So in this room, for example, for shooting the artist series, I have to step really far back with my camera to get this really close close-up basically of myself. So you still need a lot of space. But if you want something epic, something big, something very, hyper emotional, then you need a lot of space. And yeah, in general, you probably need a lot of space, especially if you're moving the camera. Okay, so Chinma Pataris had one more question that I wanted to answer, and this is going to be the last question for today. If the song concept is... Oh, sorry. No, that's the one I just answered. Kyle Anderson had another question. When should I follow the Hollywood structure for music videos? For example, rap videos just flex their stuff with their boys. And this is a really good question. And it comes back to the question, should I make a story video or should it be an emotional video, right? So am I really telling a story with my video, something like Linkin Park's Numb, right, which has this alternative storyline. We see the band performing, but it's intercut with these scenes of like this girl and this guy or whatever, like it's a love story or something. Or should I do I just shoot a scene where we just like, yeah, flex our stuff, as you said, right, into the camera, and we're just all cool and doing our thing or whatever. That's really up to you. I don't think there is any kind of rule for that. I think you can really do any of the two. What I do recommend though is you start with something, flex your stuff. Start with a flex your stuff kind of video, because story videos are a little bit more tricky. Because for that you need to really you really need to know how cinematography works in terms of telling a story with camera movement and all of that kind of stuff, and that can be a little bit tricky. So there's a lot more knowledge that goes into that. Also, you need actors that can actually act. Unless you have friends who are really good actors, that's something I mean, we don't have a lot of friends that are actors. So I have a couple, but I mean, they live very far away, and I don't think we could do that. It's just not something I want to do as well. So the flex your stuff kind of videos. So the videos that are just like people singing into the camera, and those more the fun type of videos, let's put it like that, or having a video of people just partying in a club or something like that. Those are probably the videos that you're going to shoot for your first couple of for your first couple of shoots, and those are the ones I would recommend, because the good thing about that is essentially what you can say is, everyone just do your thing. We're just going to run through and film whatever we think is cool. And then the good thing about that is, so basically you have, we have a scene in the club, right? Everyone's just doing their thing. Everyone's just really enjoying, having a good time. And you, with the camera, just go through and film things that you find interesting at that very moment in time. So you're not really planning ahead too much. I just find something you find is cool, film that a little bit, get some movement in there, go to the next thing and film that a little bit, right? Don't have too much movement, like you don't want to move from one thing to the next too quickly. You want to stay on something for a little while, just have very minimal, very little movement, because otherwise that's going to mess up your edit later on. But basically, so you want to just have a lot of coverage. You want to shoot a lot of stuff. This is also known as B-roll, right? You would just shoot a lot of stuff, and then you figure it out in the edit later on. In the edit later on, you can say like, okay, all of this was shit, but this is really cool. Like there's this one shot of just 2 seconds in here. That's something we can use, and we can cut that up and use it at different portions of the film. And the edit is really where all the magic comes across. But you can only do that if you shoot a lot of stuff on set. So B-roll is the magic keyword, especially if you're a beginner. You want to shoot a lot of stuff. So don't just film your singer or whatever and your different musicians performing the song. That's really important, and shoot them from a couple of different angles for sure. But if you're film the location a little bit as well, you know, have some shots that you can throw in there just to keep the video going, right? If you have a certain line in the song, and this happens to you all the time, especially in the beginning, if you have a talent that's not really experienced yet, that's not really talented yet, then maybe they'll mumble a line, or they forgot their line or whatever, and it's just every single shot of them doing that line just doesn't work, and that will happen, right? So for those moments, it's really good to have some B-roll of their hands where they're just gesturing or something like that. So you can go to the hands and you don't need to see their face. Or you can go to someone else just having a good time in the club or whatever, you know. So shoot a lot of stuff, I find, is really, really important, especially in your first music video. Just shoot a lot of stuff and figure it out later in the editing room, because there you have as much time as you want. During the shoot, just start as early as you can. And, oh, this is another important one. Do it like right from the start. The second you start shooting, have everyone be on board, and everyone needs to pull on the same kind of ropes, right? Because what typically happens on a shoot is that in the beginning, everyone's just kind of like, oh yeah, all right, so I guess we're starting to shoot now. And everyone's just slowly everyone's lagging behind, and everyone's just really slow. And then during the end of the shoot, like, it's like, oh, you know, we're running out of battery, so we got to go now. And then they start to, like, you know, actually care about the shoot. And it's your job as a director to make sure everyone really cares about the entire shoot from the very beginning onwards. Because otherwise you won't get enough coverage. You won't get enough shots that you can actually work with during the edit. Again, the last thing that I should probably mention is, the more you do it, the better you're going to get at it. And especially if you edit your own videos, which I always do if I'm filming a music video, it always helps to really know how you want to edit it later on. Think about a beginning, a middle, and an end, right? If I know this is going to be the first shot, then I'm going to pay a special attention to that and make sure that that first shot is perfect. And I'm going to know what my very last shot is. Everything in between is just going to be like emotional, and I'm just going to cut stuff together to make sure that that looks cool. All right, guys, This is it from me. Hopefully you found this interesting. I'm going to move into the center of my screen now so we can do this. Hello. All right. And again, as always, download my free songwriting tools on the website below this video in the description. Take one of my pro courses also down in the description. Also, subscribe and follow on Facebook, Twitter, and subscribe on YouTube, obviously. Hopefully you found this stuff interesting. Let me know if you would like to see more themed Q&As. I think we'd probably get a lot less questions that way, but maybe I can go a little bit more in depth with the answers as well. And that I think might be actually quite useful for some people. All right, let me know what you thought, and I shall see you soon. Although this might actually be the last Q&A for this year. I'm not quite sure yet, but we'll figure that out. And guys, again, thanks so much for tuning in. Take care and stay gefährlich.